Someone in Trouble. Chapter 8. Here to Help. High, high above LazyTown, Sportacus's airship circled idly in a holding pattern. Inside, the town's resident hero was going through his usual practice routine. He performed a chain of backflips from stem to stern, wall kicks from port to starboard, and full-body aerial twists landing in one-hand stands from the top of the dome to the deck. All of it kept him sharp and in shape and ready to act at any moment's notice. Not that there had been much call to action for the sports elf lately, but he didn't dwell on the fact if he could help it. Instead, he kept himself busy training for the sake of training, moving because he loved to move, and doing his best to fill his time with as much activity as he could, whether that included saving people or not. Even if saving people may have been one of his favorite things to do. A faint whistling noise outside grew sharper and louder as some fast-moving projectile streaked towards the dirigible. With impeccable aim, the object's flight path intercepted with just the right part of the hull, setting off sensors to be granted access inside for delivery. "I've got mail." Sportacus was pleasantly surprised by a canister shooting up through a specially designed chute in his floor. He somersaulted across deck and caught the airborne metal tube with ease. Without any delay, he unscrewed the lid to the capsule. "I wonder what it says." He unrolled the letter with a shake of his hand. A smile tweaked his mustache as he scanned it over. "Sportacus. Please meet us in the park at 3. It's important. Stephanie." Sportacus would never turn down a friend in need. He checked the clock mounted in the wall of his ship for the time. It would be 3 o'clock in only a little while, but he couldn't wait. With an extra spring in his step, Sportacus gave a skip and cartwheeled over to the pilot's seat. He wouldn't be late to help the kids this time. Once the ship had been navigated directly over the park, he ordered a quick method to disembark by ladder. The rope ladder could barely unfurl fast enough for the man's rapid descent, and he jumped off about 2/3 of the way down anyway. Nobody was there yet to see him stick the landing. He eyed one of the vacant park benches before dropping down and using it for some impromptu push-ups, anything to burn off some of his restless energy. "Hey, Sportacus!" Stephanie's voice was music to his ears. She sounded just as happy to see him as he felt to hear her. He sprang up on his feet and slipped automatically into his normal stance with arms akimbo. The girl had brought Pixel along for this meeting. Too bad none of the other kids seemed to be in attendance, but Sportacus was happy to see any of them. "Hi, guys," Sportacus returned the greeting. "I got your letter. Is everyone all right?" "Everyone's A-OK," Pixel said. "There's something else we need to talk to you about." "That's great," Sportacus said. "I'm ready to help with anything." "We don't really need help exactly," Stephanie said. She glanced at Pixel, seeking confirmation. "We're not really sure. It's about Robbie Rotten." "Robbie?" Sportacus deflated slightly, dropping his hands from his hips. "What about him? Is he causing trouble again?" "No," Stephanie said. "Actually, we even got him to play with us." "That's wow," Sportacus said simply. There were some things that were even impressive to a hero. The kids nodded, acknowledging the achievement. "Then what's the problem?" "Well," Stephanie said delicately, "trying to play with him didn't go as well as we'd hoped." "It crashed worse than my hard drive," Pixel illustrated helpfully. "Robbie is totally incompatible with any of our normal games. It's like he's running on a completely different OS." "What does that mean?" Sportacus asked. "He can't run that fast," Pixel said more simply. "Maybe with a little practice," Sportacus started to suggest, but Stephanie shook her head. "I don't think he's going to change that much," Stephanie said. "Honestly, I don't think he wants to." She fidgeted with the bracelets on her wrist. "Do you think that's okay? For someone to be like Robbie, is there still a way to make them happy?" Out of all the things Stephanie could have asked of Sportacus, he never could have prepared for this. After all, Robbie Rotten stood against everything that Sportacus and the kids loved. He didn't exercise, didn't eat healthy, and didn't play nice. Or at all. But if Stephanie and the other kids wanted to get closer to Robbie, wouldn't that be good for the ill-mannered man? Would it be good for the kids? Why do you think you need to make him happy? Sportacus asked. By the look on Stephanie's face, not even she was entirely sure. Robbie's been helping us so much lately. Stephanie tried to fumble through her thoughts. It's like he's trying to be nicer, even if he isn't most of the time, she added with a hint of her old resentment. Her eyes dropped along with her voice, almost mumbling in her uncertainty. I just thought we could thank him by being nice to him, too, just like we try to do things for you sometimes. But we just ended up making him feel worse. Maybe there is no way. Sportacus had offered the kids some advice here and there in the past, but this was almost beyond him. It certainly wasn't as straightforward as saving a kitten from a tree or stopping a runaway skateboard. Those were easy in comparison. No matter what the circumstances, though, Sportacus would do his best by his friends. There's always a way, Sportacus said, placing an encouraging hand on Stephanie's shoulder. She looked up at him and met the sincerity in his eyes. I know you kids are happiest when you're moving. Robbie may not like to move as much, but maybe you can meet somewhere in the middle. Come on. He released her and patted the park bench next, inviting the kids to sit down. We can do this together. So they sat down and started to talk. Or at least the kids took the bench for their brainstorming session. As much as Sportacus could do for them, sitting still was one of the hardest. Instead, he walked around them, jogged in place, did some jumping jacks, anything to keep his joints loose and the gears turning in his head while the kids tried to figure out what kind of activities there were that Robbie, the man who despised activity, might be persuaded to do. The ideas were slow in coming at first. Sportacus could suggest any number of activities that he thought were a little less intense. Hiking, archery, paddling a canoe? But even his most relaxing exercises were probably too much moving for Robbie's tastes. Stephanie and Pixel tried to figure out any ways they could take Sportacus's suggestions and lazy them down to Robbie's speed. Sportacus was proud to see the kids so determined to do something nice for Robbie, even if it felt like he couldn't really help them with this so much after all. He suspected that Stephanie and the others had summoned him down more out of a habit than any real belief that he would have the right expertise for this problem. Thankfully, they were starting to come up with some things on their own. Thankfully, they didn't really need him for this. Didn't need him. These are great, Pixel declared once they'd come up with a good handful of ideas. I'll go compile these on my computer for further analysis. We can show it to the other kids tomorrow. Already running through programming macros in his head, Pixel hurried for home to convert the day's brainstorming into digital data. Stephanie lingered a bit longer, seeming reluctant to give her adieu. Sportacus knew Stephanie well enough to be able to sense there was more that she needed to say. He kept a friendly smile on his face as he tilted his head at her inquisitively. Is there anything else I can do for you, Stephanie? He asked. Stephanie shook her head slowly. A small wrinkle furrowed her brow. There isn't anything that you need, is there, Sportacus? Stephanie asked, turning it around on the man. Sportacus's smile widened more naturally. It was touching of the girl to show some concern for him. I don't think so, Sportacus said. After all, I got to see you guys today. What more could I need? This was apparently the wrong thing to say, as Sportacus noticed Stephanie's face fall ever so slightly. It feels like we barely get to see you anymore, Stephanie said. There isn't enough trouble in LazyTown for both you and Robbie, is there? The way she asked, it was hard to tell if she was joking or not. I think it is better if there isn't, Sportacus said wryly. Stephanie gave a small giggle, conceding to the silliness of the question, before the humor subsided from her face again, giving Sportacus another searching look. But if there's no more trouble for you to take care of now that Robbie's doing it, what will you do? Ah, Sportacus said, and paused. Well, I will keep training, of course, so I'm always ready in case I am needed. He didn't elaborate beyond that. It was hard to, when he didn't know the answer to it himself. Sportacus had stayed in LazyTown for so long, the idea of leaving it was almost impossible to comprehend. But if the town didn't need him to be their hero any more, what reasons did he have to stay? He spent more and more time up in his airship, training and waiting for his crystal to beep that people might need him. Training for things, he feared, that may not come along for him here again.